Hello and welcome to another Atypical Philosopher video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a Frontline update for the 15th of November 2022. It's been fairly quiet overnight, but there are a few points of interest. Just as a reminder to people, I have done a video update on the Kherson and Kherson Peninsula as a separate video. There was too much to talk about, and it would have meant this one would have been about an hour long. So I've done that. If you want separate information on that, go and look at that. Always a good time now to remind people you can listen to me on 1.5, 1.75, two times speed by going to the cog at the bottom right, usually, of your YouTube video, clicking on the cog and turning the normal speed up to a faster speed so you can get through these videos more quickly. And all my umming and ahhing and verbal tics, the way that I pause, will disappear just like that. Happy days. Anyway, there have been reports of Kharkiv being attacked with, I think, S-300 missiles, so surface-to-air missiles, but being used in their secondary purpose to attack ground targets. Not very accurate, comparatively speaking. There's also been an attack, including a helicopter sortie, on Tonova, which is, let's show you here. It's been attacked before. So we've got Kharkiv there, Tonova on the Russian-Ukrainian border. That has been attacked, but the Russians failed to get a foothold there, so ground troops failed to get a foothold. There was also a helicopter involved. Interesting that they keep sort of prodding and probing on this northern border to keep the Ukrainians, you would imagine, on their toes. Otherwise, what else can we say? Well, an uptick in terms of loss of equipment from yesterday. This will almost certainly be as a result of the numbers in Kherson being added. So we have 710 liquidated personnel, another high day for the Russians, not looking good there. 13 tanks, 25 APCs, 11 artillery systems. That includes multiple launch rocket systems. So we saw a Grad yesterday that was fallen on its side. That's been picked up and towed away, and that will be fixed. We found it was full of rockets itself, and they found ammo for it as well. So that's great. 2 anti-aircraft warfare systems, 2 drones. Again, a low drone. Which shows that they just don't have the drones at the moment, but big shipments from Iran have been reported. I mean, lots from Iran. So that could really tick up going forward. And 35 vehicles and fuel tanks. That's just a massive number. So that's a huge loss for the Russians happening there. And I'm sure you'll see that continue for the next few days as those reports come in. A few things to report. Melitopol, another partisan attack on someone there. And I said I'm not going to talk about Kherson, but just to let you know, because this is even more recent than what I've just been telling you, is that we do now have what amounts to confirmation now that that forces have landed on the Kinburn Spit. I was talking about don't we know, and then I was saying, yeah, they're pretty much there. So now Natalia Humenyuk, the spokeswoman for the Southern Command, told the TV war broadcast this is currently a zone of active hostilities, so we are keeping quiet about it now. Exactly what I said. It's going to be the operational command south are pretty good at operational security, so they do keep things pretty close to the chest. So there we go. That's all looking fairly good for the Ukrainians in general. Quiet from the Russians overnight. Explosions this morning in Melitopol. So again, that could be something to do with the partisan activity. Could be other hits. And this is worth dwelling on. So almost all of occupied part of Zaporizhzhia. This is from this morning from Tim White. And just to let you know, I am interviewing Tim White tomorrow. We're doing a live tomorrow at 12:30 UK time. So please come and hang out live for it was such a good chat I had with him last time we spoke, about probably 3 weeks ago now. Really looking forward to that live. Do come and hang out with us. So he says almost all of occupied Zaporizhzhia has been plunged into darkness, including Melitopol, as well as power cuts. And most are also without water. Reasons for the cuts are unknown, whether that's something to do with hits that the Ukrainians have succeeded. Okay, let's now go to our northeast, just to remind you where that is. So that's Kharkiv. We're going to go to here, this area. Let's put that more in the middle of the screen. So we've dealt with that this morning. Going to come up here, start and go down here, and sort of probably finish in Pavlivka. Not a lot going on the Zaporizhzhia front. Okay, so Kupiansk down to Svatove, down to Kreminna. Lots to be said about this. Okay, so let's go to the Svatove area. Svatove is here. Kupiansk is up here, and then we have the P66 highway goes from Svatove down to Kreminna. The Russians have admitted that things have hotted up, that they have escalated around Svatove. So things are definitely happening there. We know that Kuzmivka is a scene of intense fighting at the moment, Kislivka as well. It looks like the Russians have finally admitted that they no longer control Makivka, so they're sort of pulled out there. They don't control that. And yeah, things are looking I guess better for the Ukrainians. There seems to be a little bit of momentum. Here's an intercepted call that is fascinating. Of course, you know, verification, all that kind of conversation needs to be had around this, but it seems pretty genuine to me when you listen to it. But he says, so this is someone mobilized of the 2nd Commandment Company of the 362nd Motorized Rifle Regiment from the Lipetsk were abandoned by the command on a front line at Svatove. This call with one of the survivors describes how from the regiment 2,500 have already perished. That is massive. We keep hearing about groups of mobilized troops being left behind around the Svatove area. It seems to be a really bad area for the sort of command and control. This is. I will play just a little bit of this because I think it is worth listening to.
Просто людей не считают. Пацаны приходят сюда, с одного батальона приходят...
15 to 20 out of 500 people return. The commander's lying to us. So I think here what he's saying is that the commander's lying, and he reports only the dead that are reported in the hospital rather than the dead that are out on the field and not collected and all that kind of stuff. And so the figures are just not accurate. We have this many dead, this many wounded, but that's from what they know of in the hospital.
Он вчера нам комбат толкал, нахуй. Ребята, вам нужно 2 недели продержаться, потом, ебать, подойдут, типа того, что, блядь, какие-то пиздатые клапана.
So this is interesting. So he's saying that here we need to hold this area, this entrenchment for 2 weeks. He goes on to talk about it later in a bit more detail, but it's like, who are we to, like 2,500 people who just died trying to do this. And like, you just asked us to go for 2 weeks before some effing cool guys are going to arrive and take over. He's like, in 12 days, we have lost 2,500 people. Our entire regiment has been decimated, right? In 12 days. And you're asking us, this much smaller group of people, to hold this place for 2 weeks. You're like, on your bike, mate. So, yeah. And he's saying, we're not trained for combat. And he goes on to talk about, being sent to the front line, completely inadequately equipped and trained. Anyway, I will play that in the extra video if I get a chance. But I just thought that was interesting to show here, because this is Svatove, and we keep hearing sort of horror stories for the Russians coming out of Svatove of how terribly the mobilized troops are being treated, how poorly trained and equipped they are, and they're just being sent in to get absolutely massacred. And this seems to be a meat grinder here that we're not hearing a lot of details from the Ukrainians about, and not an awful lot of footage, but it just must be really terrible right up and down this front line. Otherwise, it's pretty much as per usual. So Makivka, the Russians are not there. There's this push towards Ploshchanka and Chervonopopivka down here. The Ukrainians are still plugging away at that. There's still activity going on around there. There is also counterattacks from the Russians now towards Torsky again. So as the Ukrainians are pushing up further up here, the Russians are pushing down south in this area just to the west of Kreminna. So let's have a look at some of the other details I have. So this is what War Mapper is saying, that it's all going on around Kuzmivka up there towards Svatove, which is what I've been saying. unconfirmed reports that the Ukrainians have forced a breakthrough in Maiorsk, south of Svatove. Russian forces report that the Ukrainians broke through with at least 10 pieces of equipment. So that's quite a meaningful breakthrough if that is confirmed. So let's just go to where that is. So this is Svatove. This. So this is here, all the way over here. Now that's a really interesting breakthrough because that would be across the P66 highway. Okay, and yeah, a breakthrough there. I've not marked it on the map because that is literally all I've heard about it from no reports. But if that's happened, then you could start seeing a porous sort of highway area here and a bit of momentum gathered from the Ukrainians. But again, who knows for sure? 10 pieces of equipment is pretty substantial there. Russian sources report that Ukrainian troop build-up in Lozova west of Svatove-Kreminna. Besides that, fresh Russian troops have been noticed in the Svatove direction coming from Kherson. That is interesting. So we're now starting to see the Kherson troops filter into the area. I'd heard that a little bit yesterday as well. Svatove-Kreminna is here. So there's this build-up around here, Lozova, of Ukrainian troops. Whether you're going to see any Ukrainian troops from Kherson as well is something to think about. Russian sources, yeah, so sorry, just done that one. The Ukrainians approached the southern outskirts of Kreminna via the Svatove-Kreminna forest. This was reported by the Bars 13, so these are Reserve Commander Sergei Fomchenkov. Russia confirmed they retreated from Makivka, that's what I told you about a couple of days ago, due to difficult battles. The Ukrainians continued to push there. So that's the Makivka area here, there. So as we come down south to Kreminna, this is really interesting because Bilorivka, we know that the Russians are in Bilorivka, and there is, continued reports about that. It's been looking really difficult for the Ukrainians there over the last week, but now we're hearing that some kind of attack towards Kreminna from the forested area. So what's going on with Dobrova? I've heard nothing about Dobrova. So there's all sorts of claims coming on around here, and I guess the fog of war, we'll find out sooner or later exactly what's going on there. And then here we have another claim. So this is just south of Svatove. In the settlement of Miluvatka, the defense forces of Ukraine destroyed the headquarters of a unit of Russian troops. It's known that 30 dead and more than 20 wounded occupiers. That's according to the general staff. So that will be some kind of artillery or HIMARS or GIMLRS hit on Miluvatka. So all sorts of stuff going on up and down that front. When the dust settles, we'll adapt our maps and see what the damage is. But basically, yeah, Bilorivka still the scene of quite a lot of activity there. And as we come down this Bilorivka too, and we come down to Soledar and Bakhmut, again, lots of activity around Bakhmut. It is a really difficult area to be in. Although I also forgot to say that the Russians are attacking further north here, attacking into Spirny, and I'll try and pronounce this, but Verkhnokkamyansky, this area here. So the Russians are putting pressure to the northeast of Bakhmut as well. It all seems to be happening. So just before I show you something else, I'm just going to read you what the ISW, the Institute for the Study of Wars, just says about the Bakhmut area. It is looking pretty horrible there. Russian sources also claim that Wagner forces advanced deep into the southeastern outskirts of Bakhmut, so that's interesting. We'd like to see what the Ukrainians say about that. And that fierce fighting between Ukrainian and Wagner forces persists in the southeastern outskirts of Soledar. I'll show you this on a map in a second. These sources claim that Ukrainian forces are equipping their strongholds in the path of Russian forces near Bakhmut and Soledar. The Ukrainian government reported that Russian forces dropped prohibited chemical weapons, several K-51 aerosol grenades, or on Ukrainian strongholds on November the 14th. The use of chemical weapons such as K-51 aerosol grenades is explicitly prohibited by the Chemical Weapons Convention. Both Russian and Ukrainian forces intensified shelling, missile and artillery strikes along the contact line in the Bakhmut area. So that is not good news, obviously. Solidar around here. So the southeastern is going to be this sort of area. In fact, as it comes onto Bakhmutski, it's this Kanavkips factory. There's fighting certainly around that here and the streets just to the northeast of that. So I'd imagine you're starting to see a movement out of that factory area. And then when it comes to Bakhmut, the southeast could be, I mean, that could include Opitny. We know there's fighting around there. But could it be that the Russians have got into the southern districts of Bakhmut? It's again, time will tell. Bakhmut is a pretty terrible area to be. I mean, goodness me, the destructive the scenes of destruction around Bakhmut. Just they remind you of Mariupol, I guess. Yeah, not a great place to be, and that is Bakhmut. And some people still living there. We saw 5 people being taken out of a basement in Opitny yesterday. So that just goes to show how tenacious people can be in holding on to life in the most unlikely of places. So that is Bakhmut. Now here's I just want to show you a little bit. This shows you sort of thing that's going on in Bakhmut. British soldier in Ukraine details alleged Russian war crimes. They plant mines everywhere. And here's a guy with 14 years in the British Army. He's now fighting in Russia. Says it's absolutely horrible, nothing like he's ever seen. And he's working on demining and stuff in the Bakhmut area. So Templeton says, that's his name, Templeton says that Russian troops don't actually want to fight. They are easy to suppress. He admitted he almost feels sorry for the conscripts who he claimed are told to fight or face being shot themselves. We just pray they surrender, he said. They do not want to be there at all. The problem is that as they retreat, Wagner forces are littering the ground with mines and booby traps and, quote, every step forward has to be covered with a fine-tooth comb, meaning progress is slow. Just this week, Mr. Templeton's unit entered a village south of Donetsk, which had just been liberated, to find a woman in her 70s had 14 mines outside her front door. The whole village was flat apart from this one house, he said. They've got a minefield right outside their front garden, and they have a missile in a back garden, and they've got shrapnel all through their house. We spent half a day clearing the mines out, and when we told her that we'd cleared the area, she just broke down in tears, he said. On another day, the Foreign Legion came across a grenade in a tree connected to a tripwire. It's got no specific target. It's just going to take out anyone who trips on it, Templeton said. The Russians just put them anywhere and everywhere. According to government estimates, Ukrainian sappers dispose of 4,000 to 5,000 explosive devices every day. The Ukrainian authorities have involved foreign specialists like Mr. Templeton and have already started work on establishing the International Demining Centre. They've found mined children's toys, washing machines, bags of potatoes, playgrounds. In addition, Russian aggressors did not neglect to mine the corpses of people and animals. So if you go to move dead animals and people, bang, they explode. And so the point of me saying that now, it just goes to show how slowly movement is. So when you take an area, and you can talk about this anywhere on the front line, right? Anywhere here, it's slow going, because as soon as the Ukrainians advance, they have to make sure that they're not going to get blown up by these consistently booby-trapped and mined scenarios up and down these front lines. So, yeah, anyway, that's just a really interesting source to give you some kind of context around that. Okay, so we go slightly further south from Bakhmut, which is looking, not great. Well, not great for anyone, either side. We come to Maiorsk. So Maiorsk is particularly a railway junction station that the Russians have claimed to control, and there are claims and counterclaims. So DPR forces, so the Donetsk People's Republic forces, reportedly at the exit of Maiorsk on the road to Toretsk. Just to let you know that this is this road out there, because whereas Toretsk is there, so it's going to be on this road. So the Russians are either there or there, probably more like here. Then that would show that they are in control of that town broadly. Russia reported the capture of Maiorsk. The troops were geolocated by deep state at the southern outskirts. Therefore, we can't speak of a capture. Fighting continues in Bakhmut, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, not 100% sure, but it looks pretty dodgy. So moving on, so Ukrainian forces have conducted a pinpoint strike on a Russian command post in occupied Horlivka. There are significant losses. So, just to let you know where Horlivka is. And this is this large city right just south of where we were. So there's or actually east of where we were. So we're talking about Maiorsk. Let's go to my map here. So there's Maiorsk, and Horlivka is right next door, really. So there's been a pinpoint attack here, whether that is Excalibur or general artillery or just HIMARS or GIMLRs or something. I guess we'll find out. And then as we come further south, so just sort of skipping through really quickly because I know I spent too long, we come to Avdiivka. Nothing much else out of there other than it's really tough. Vodyania and Opitny and Pervomaisky. That's the axis of where the Russians are concentrating quite a lot, but also up north to try and get that pincer. As we come down to Marinka again, tough around there, we come to Pavlivka. And it seems like the Russians probably do have control over Pavlivka now. So I might want to adjust my map to reflect that. But that's not necessarily like a super great thing, as in, well, let's have a look here. Russian MOD claims that capture of Pavlivka. Regarding Pavlivka, the Ukrainian used aviation. They are dead. If we don't move on, Pavlivka will become a trap, says Alexander Kodadkovsky, Vostok Battalion commander, fighting in Marinka, Avdiivka and Vodyania. Why that is important? Because you can control Pavlivka, right? From a Russian's point of view, you can control Pavlivka, but with a 30-meter elevation that Vuhledar has, and with active batteries of artillery around here that are being sighted by drones, but also by line of sight from Vuhledar. You don't even need drones, but they are talking about the drones active there. You don't really need them because you can just see from here to there and, say, oh, left 500 meters or whatever, or 50 meters, and you can do your spotting from Vuhledar. Anyway, Pavlivka is a trap. It's just like a target for artillery and for snipers and for all sorts of AGTMs and everything. So if you don't move out of Pavlivka, you're just sitting there getting attacked. I mean, whoa, whoop-de-doo, you've got Pavlivka. Brilliant, well done. Now what? Unless you are taking Vuhledar, there is no point being there. You are basically asking to be killed. Just sitting there does nothing. Anything that you can do from there, broadly, you can do from behind there, and probably a lot safer. If you're going to use artillery, yeah, use it from here and hit Vuhledar, but there's no real point being in Pavlivka unless you're using that as a launch pad to attack Vuhledar. But that space between there are just killing fields. Any advance through there, you're going to be hit by the artillery, and you're going to be hit by these by line of sight attacks from these buildings that are sort of blocks of flats or apartment blocks just along that road there. You can just sight everything here. So it's just, what are you doing, Russia? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens, if anything, today. Anyway, that's my walk through the front line. I've already done Kherson and the Kinburn Peninsula. Hopefully that was useful. Please like, subscribe, share. Any kind of thanks through Buy Me a Coffee or PayPal or in the description below, or YouTube thanks is really appreciated. That there are some of you who are so unbelievably generous, and I massively appreciate that, because otherwise I wouldn't be doing this. And I am interviewing Tim White tomorrow at 12:30 UK time. Please come along, ask your questions. It should be a really interesting time. Anyway, toodle pips. See you later.